The wind on Mars was always cold, Marcus. Cole stood alone in the military cemetery, his boots sinking slightly. Into the red dust, 5 graves lay. Before him, 5 names he would never forget, 5 friends who would never go home. He placed his hand on the first stone. Private James Wheeler, 22 years old. He had talked about opening a bakery when the war ended. Now he was just a name carved in rock on a planet far from Earth. Marcus visited this place every month. Some people told him to move on. Some said the dead were gone, and there was no point in talking to graves, but Marcus came anyway. He owed them that much. He was the only one who walked away from that battle. Sometimes he wished he had not. His communicator buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. The device buzzed again and again. Finally, he pulled it out and looked at the screen. Orders from command. Report to Geneva Station immediately. Priority Alpha. Marcus stared at the message for a long moment. Priority Alpha meant something big, something they did not want to discuss over open channels. He looked back at the graves one last time. I have to go, he said quietly. I will come back soon. He turned and walked toward his transport ship, leaving 5 silent stones behind him. Geneva Station floated in orbit around Earth like a giant metal flower. It was the center of human diplomacy, the place where deals were made and wars were prevented. Marcus had been here only twice before, and both times had ended with someone trying to kill him. He walked through the white corridors, following the directions on his communicator. Officers and diplomats moved past him, barely giving him a glance. His uniform was clean but simple. He was just a sergeant, nothing special. The door at the end of the hallway opened into a large conference room. Inside, a long table was surrounded by people in expensive suits and high-ranking military uniforms. Marcus recognized Admiral Chen, the head of Earth's United Military Command. Beside her sat Ambassador Wright, a thin man with gray hair and tired eyes. Sergeant Cole. Admiral Chen said, "Thank you for coming so quickly. Please sit down." Marcus took a seat at the far end of the table. He felt out of place among all these important people. May I ask what this is about, Admiral? Ambassador Wright cleared his throat. Sergeant, what do you know about the Valeri Empire? Marcus thought for a moment. They are an old civilization, very advanced technology. They stayed neutral during our war with the Krix. Their shield systems are supposed to be the best in the galaxy. Correct, Wright said. And now they want to form an alliance with humanity. They have offered us access to their shield technology in exchange for military cooperation. That sounds like good news, Marcus said. It would be, Admiral Chen replied, if not for their conditions. She pressed a button and Clear's throat. A holographic image appeared above the table. It showed woman with silver skin and violet eyes. She was beautiful in a strange, otherworldly way. Her face was calm, but there was something sad in her eyes. This is Princess Yuna, the Admiral continued, third daughter of Emperor Dejo. The Valeri have offered her in marriage to seal our alliance. It is their tradition, a bond between bloodlines to ensure loyalty. Marcus frowned. And the problem is, Ambassador Wright sighed. The problem, Sergeant, is that no one will accept her. The Valeri consider her worthless. When she was young, a sickness destroyed her ability to have children. In their Culture, a woman who cannot produce. Heirs has no value. Every Valari noble has refused to marry her, and when we suggested human candidates, the volunteers disappeared once they learned the truth. They see this marriage as an insult. Admiral Chen added, the Valori are offering us their trash, and they expect us to be grateful, but if we refuse, the alliance fails and we need those shields. Sergeant, the Six are rebuilding their forces. Without Valari technology, the next war could destroy us. Marcus looked at the holographic image of the princess. She stood straight and proud, but he could see the loneliness hiding behind her royal mask. He knew that look. He saw it in his own mirror every morning. So you need someone to marry her, Marcus said slowly, someone who does not care about politics or children, someone with nothing to lose. We need a volunteer, right? Confirmed. Someone decorated enough to satisfy Valari standards, but someone who will not make this into a bigger mess. We are not asking for love, Sergeant. We are asking for a performance. 1 year. Maybe 2, then we arrange a quiet separation, and you can return to your normal life with our gratitude. The room was silent. Marcus could feel everyone watching him, waiting for his response. He thought about his empty apartment on Mars. He thought about the 5 graves he visited every month. He thought about all the soldiers who would die if the 6 attacked again, and humanity had no shields to protect them. I will do it, he said. Admiral Chen blinked. Sergeant, you do not have to decide right now. Take some time to think about it. I do not need time. Marcus stood up from his chair. If marrying this princess saves lives, then I will marry her. It is not complicated. Ambassador Wright looked at him with a mixture of surprise and respect. You understand this will not be easy. The Valari will look down on you. They will treat you like dirt, and the princess herself may not welcome a human husband. I have been treated like dirt before. Marcus replied, I survived. I will survive this too. 3 days later, Marcus boarded a transport ship heading for Valari space. His duffel bag contained everything he owned, some clothes, a few books, and a small box holding his mother's wedding ring. She had given it to him before she died years ago. For the woman you love, she had said. He never thought he would use it. He never thought he would find anyone worth loving, but now he was flying across the galaxy to marry a stranger. The transport ship hummed quietly as it entered hyperspace. Marcus sat by the window watching the stars stretch into lines of light. He did not know what waited for him on the other side. He did not know if the princess would hate him or ignore him or something worse, but for the first time in years he felt something strange in his chest. Not happiness, exactly, not hope, but purpose, a reason to wake up tomorrow. Maybe that was enough. The stars blurred around him, carrying him toward a future he could not imagine. And somewhere on a distant planet, a lonely princess waited for a husband she never wanted, sent by people who saw her as nothing more than a political tool. Neither of them knew that everything was about to change. The Valari homeworld was called Solara Prime. From orbit it looked like a jewel floating in space. Crystal towers rose from the surface, catching the light of 3 suns. Everything sparkled and shined like something from a dream. Marcus had never seen anything so beautiful or so cold. His transport landed in the royal palace. Courtyard. The moment he stepped outside, he felt eyes watching him from every direction. Valari nobles stood in groups along the walkway, their silver skin glowing. Softly in the sunlight, they wore robes, made of fabric that seemed to flow like water. They looked at Marcus the way someone might look at mud on their shoes. A tall Valari man approached him. His face showed no emotion, but his eyes were sharp and unfriendly. I am Ambassador Jinho, he said. I will be your guide during the courtship period. Follow me. Marcus followed him through halls made of white stone and crystal. Everywhere he looked, he saw paintings of Valari families, parents with children, generations of bloodlines stretching back thousands of years. He began to understand why fertility mattered so much to these people. Their entire culture was built on the idea of legacy. The courtship period will last 1 month, Jinho explained as they walked. During this time you will attend ceremonies, learn our customs, and spend time with the princess. If both parties agree, the wedding will take place on the final day. If either party refuses, the alliance is canceled. What if I do something wrong? Marcus asked. What if I break one of your rules? By accident, Jinho glanced at him with something like amusement. Then I suggest you try not to make accidents. The throne room was enormous. Pillars of crystal held up a ceiling so high that Marcus could barely see it. At the far end, Emperor Dejo sat on a throne carved from a single piece of white stone. He was old but powerful, with eyes that seemed to see everything. Beside the throne stood a young man. Royal armor, Prince Taewon. Marcus guessed the princess's older brother. He had the same silver skin and violet eyes, but there was something cruel in the way he smiled. And there, standing alone at the bottom of the steps, was Princess Yuna. She was smaller than Marcus expected, delicate. Her silver hair fell past her shoulders like a waterfall of moonlight. Her dress was simple compared to the other nobles, almost plain. She stood perfectly still, her hands folded in front of her, her face showing nothing. Marcus walked forward and stopped a few feet away from her. The whole room was silent, waiting to see what the human would do. He bowed. Not a fancy bow like the Valari did, but a simple, respectful one. Then he looked up and met her eyes. It is nice to meet you, Your Highness, he said. I hope we can be friends at least. Something flickered in her eyes, surprise maybe, or confusion. She had probably expected pity or disgust or fake politeness. She had not expected kindness. Welcome to Solara Prime, she said. Her voice was soft and careful, like she was reading from a script. I trust your journey was comfortable. It was long, Marcus admitted, but I am here now. That is what matters. The emperor watched them from his throne but said nothing. Prince Taewon whispered something to a noble beside him, and they both laughed quietly. The sound echoed through the hall like poison. The first week was difficult. Marcus made mistakes constantly. He ate with the wrong fork. He stood when he should have sat. He spoke when he should have stayed silent. Every day brought a new rule he did not know existed, and every night brought whispers from nobles who thought he could not hear them. Primitive, they called him. Short-lived. Marcus ignored them. He had survived worse things than mean words, but what bothered him most was the princess herself. She was always polite, always proper, always distant. They spent hours together in formal meetings, but she never said anything real. She wore her royal mask-like armor, and Marcus could not find a way through it. One afternoon, Prince Tywin found Marcus alone in a garden courtyard. The prince smiled his cruel smile and sat down beside him without asking permission. "You seem lost, human," Tywin said. "Let me help you understand something. My sister is damaged goods. Everyone knows it. You are only here because nobody else would take her." Marcus kept his face calm. "And why are you telling me this?" "Because I want to offer you a deal." Tywin leaned closer. "Marry her, stay for 1 year, help me gain some political influence, and I will make sure you leave this planet a very rich man. You can have your quiet annulment and forget this whole embarrassing situation ever happened." Marcus thought about the offer. He thought about the money, the easy escape, the chance to return to his old life. Then he thought about the princess standing alone in that throne room, waiting for another person to use her and throw her away. "No," he said. Tywin blinked. "No, I gave my word," Marcus replied. "That means something where I come from. I did not come here to make deals with you. I came here to marry your sister. So unless you have something useful to say, I think we are done talking." The prince's smile disappeared. His eyes turned cold and hard. "You will regret this, human. You do not understand how things work here." "Maybe not," Marcus agreed. "But I understand how things should work, and that is enough for me." That evening, Marcus went looking for the princess. The servants told him she was in her private garden, a small space behind the eastern tower. He found her there alone, kneeling in the dirt. The garden was dying. Most of the plants were brown and wilted, but Una worked anyway, pulling weeds and turning soil, trying to save what little remained. Marcus watched her for a moment, then he walked over, knelt down beside her, and started pulling weeds too. She stared at him. "What are you doing?" "Helping," he said simply. "Why?" He looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time he saw past the royal mask. He saw a woman who had been told she was worthless for 15 years. A woman who had been abandoned by her own family, ignored by her own people, offered to a stranger like leftover food because it looked like you could use a hand, he said, and because nobody should have to work alone. She did not respond, but she did not tell him to leave either. They worked together in silence as the sun set behind the crystal towers. And when darkness finally came, Marcus stood up and offered her his hand. "Same time tomorrow?" he asked. Una looked at his hand for a long moment, then slowly she took it and let him help her stand. "Same time tomorrow," she agreed. It was not much, just a small moment in a dying garden, but it was the first real thing that had passed between them. And sometimes the smallest seeds grow into the strongest trees. Days turned into weeks. The dying garden slowly came back to life, and so did Princess Una. It started with small things, a tiny smile when Marcus said something funny, a longer conversation about the stars and the differences between human and Valari astronomy. She taught him to read the old star poems that her people wrote in light script. He taught her to play poker. "This game makes no sense," she said one evening, staring at her cards with confusion. "Why would you want others to think you have something different than what you actually have? That is the whole point," Marcus explained. "Life is not always about showing your true hand. Sometimes you have to bluff until your luck changes." Una looked at him over her Cards, is that what you are doing? Bluffing about what? About all of this. She put her cards down. About being here, about wanting to marry me. No one has ever wanted me, Marcus. Not really. So why are you different? It was the first time she had used his name instead of his title. It felt like a door opening. Marcus set his own cards aside. Can I tell you something? Something I have not told anyone. She nodded slowly. 3 years ago, I led a squad of 5 soldiers into a creek's ambush. It was supposed to be a simple mission, but I made a mistake. I trusted the wrong information and they all died. Every single one of them. He stared at his hands, remembering the blood, the screaming, the silence that came after. I was the only one who walked away, and every day since then, I have wondered. Why me? Why did I survive when they did not? Una was quiet for a long moment. And you think marrying me will somehow make up for their deaths? I thought so at first, Marcus admitted. I thought if I could do something good, something important, it would give their deaths meaning. But now he looked at her, really looked at her. Now I think I am here because I was supposed to be. I do not know why. I cannot explain it. But when I am with you, I feel like I am finally in the right place. Her violet eyes shimmered with tears. She refused to let fall. You barely know me. Then let me know you better. Let me see the real you, not the princess, not the mask, just you. She did not answer. But that night when they said goodbye, she held his hand for just a moment, longer than necessary. And Marcus knew that something had changed between them. The traditionalist faction grew louder as the wedding approached. They marched in the streets, carrying signs that called humans inferior and contaminating. They demanded that Emperor Dejo cancel the marriage and find a proper Villari match for the princess, even though no Villari would have her. Ambassador Jinho warned Marcus to stay inside the palace. The protesters were dangerous. Some of them had been arrested with weapons, but Marcus refused to hide. He attended every ceremony, stood beside Una at every public event, and refused to show fear. You are stubborn, Una told him. One afternoon, I prefer to call it determined, he replied. The ceremony that day was a simple one. Marcus and Una were supposed to walk through the Grand Plaza while citizens watched from behind barriers. It was supposed to show unity, supposed to prove that the alliance was strong. They were halfway across the plaza when Marcus saw the flash of light. He did not think, he did not hesitate. He threw himself in front of Una just as the energy bolt hit his shoulder. Pain exploded through his body. He heard screaming, shouting, the sound of guards running, but all he could focus on was Una's face above him, her eyes wide with shock. Why? She whispered, her hands pressing against his wound, trying to stop the blood. Marcus managed a weak smile. Despite the pain, told you we would be friends. Then everything went dark. He woke up in the medical wing 3 days later. His shoulder was wrapped in regenerative bandages. Machines beeped softly around him, and sitting beside his bed, her head resting on his mattress, was Princess Una. She had been crying. He could see the dried tear marks on her silver cheeks. Her perfect royal hair was messy and tangled. She looked exhausted, like she had not slept in days. Marcus reached out with his good arm and touched her hand gently. She woke with a start, and when she saw his eyes open, something broke inside her. You stupid, stupid man, she said, her voice cracking. You almost died. For me, for someone everyone says is worthless, why would you do something so foolish? Because you are not worthless, Marcus replied simply. And because I made a promise, I told you. I wanted to be friends. Friends protect each other. She stared at him, tears streaming down her face now without any attempt to hide them. I have never had a friend before, not a real one. Sarah tries, but she is my servant. She has to be nice to me. Nobody has ever chosen to care about me. Nobody has ever taken a weapon blast for me. Then I am honored to be the first, Marcus said. He pulled her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. It was not a romantic gesture. Not exactly. It was something deeper. Promise that he meant everything he said. Word of what happened spread across the galaxy. Humans saw one of their soldiers almost die to protect an alien princess. Valari saw human value there. Princess's life more than his own. Story was impossible to ignore. Emperor Dejo came to visit Marcus himself. He stood at the foot of the bed, studying the human soldier with new eyes. I expected you to run, the Emperor said quietly. After the attack, I expected you to demand passage home, to claim this was too dangerous to find any excuse to leave. Sorry to disappoint you, Marcus replied. You do not disappoint me. The Emperor's cold mask slipped for just a moment. You confuse me. Humans are supposed to be selfish, short-lived creatures who think only of themselves, but you risked your life for my daughter, the daughter I have ignored for 15 years because she could not give me heirs. He paused, and Marcus saw something like shame in the old ruler and LT Uncle GT's eyes. Perhaps the Emperor continued, we have misjudged your kind, and perhaps I have misjudged my own daughter. He turned and walked away without another word, but it was enough. The first crack had appeared in centuries of prejudice. When Marcus was finally able to leave his bed, Una was waiting for him in the hallway. She looked nervous, uncertain, like she was about to say something important. You can still leave, she said. Nobody would blame you after what happened. I will release you from the arrangement. You have done more than enough. Marcus stepped closer to her and took both her hands in his. I am not going anywhere, he said. Not unless you want me to, and even then, I would probably argue about it. She laughed. It was the first time he had heard her laugh, and it was the most beautiful sound he had ever heard. Soft and surprised, like she had forgotten she could make such a noise. You are impossible, she said. I know, he agreed, but I am your impossible if you will have me. She squeezed his hands tightly. Yes, she whispered, I will have you. And standing in that cold palace hallway, surrounded by centuries of tradition that called her worthless, Una finally felt like she mattered, not because of her blood, not because of politics, but because one stubborn human soldier had decided she was worth protecting, and that made all the difference. Wedding day arrived with 3 suns rising over Solara Prime. The crystal towers sparkled like diamonds. Flowers from 100 worlds decorated the grand temple, and across the galaxy, billions of people watched the broadcast that would change history. Marcus stood at the altar in his dress uniform, his shoulder still ached from the wound, but he refused to show it. Today was not about pain. Today was about promises. The temple doors opened and Princess Una stepped through. She wore a gown of silver and gold that seemed to flow like liquid light. Her hair was woven with tiny crystals that caught the sunlight and scattered it into rainbows, but Marcus did not notice any of that. He only saw her eyes, those beautiful violet eyes that had been so cold and distant when they first met, now shining with something he had never expected to see. Hope. She walked down the aisle, alone, no father to give her away, no family standing with her. The emperor sat on his throne watching, but he did not rise. Even now tradition kept him distant from his barren daughter, but Una held her head high. She did not need anyone to give her away. She was giving herself freely to the man who had proven he deserved her trust. The high priest began the ceremony in the ancient Valari language. He spoke of bloodlines and duty and the importance of continuing the family name. The traditional vows were written on a scroll before them, words about children and heirs and genetic legacy. When it was time for Marcus to speak, he looked at the scroll, then he looked at Una. Then he pushed the scroll aside. A gasp rippled through the crowd. I am not going to read those words, Marcus said, his voice calm but clear, because they are not my words, and this is my promise to make. The high priest sputtered in protest, but Marcus continued, Yauna, I did not come here because of politics. I did not stay because of duty. I stayed because of you, because you are kind and strong and beautiful in ways your people cannot see, because you deserve someone who sees your value, not your limitations. He took her hands in his. I promise to stand beside you, to protect you, not because you are weak, but because everyone deserves someone who will fight for them. I promise to respect you, to listen to you, to treat you as an equal partner in everything we do, and I promise to never ever make you feel like you are not enough, because you are. You always were. Your worth is not measured by children you can or cannot have. Your worth is measured by the person you are, and the person you are is extraordinary. Tears rolled down Una's silver cheeks. She did not try to hide them. I thought I would spend my life alone, she said, softly, her voice trembling. I thought no one would ever want me, but you showed me something different. You showed me that love does not require conditions, that someone could care about me simply because of who I am. I do not know if I deserve you, Marcus Cole, but I promise to spend the rest of my life trying to. The high priest looked uncomfortable, unsure if he should continue with a ceremony that had broken so many traditions. He glanced at the emperor, who sat perfectly still, his face unreadable. Then slowly, Emperor Dejo nodded. The priest cleared his throat. Then, by the authority of the Valari Empire and the alliance with Earth, I declare you bound. Together, may your union bring strength to both our peoples. Marcus kissed his bride, and the temple erupted in applause. Some of it was polite and traditional, but some of it was genuine, especially from the younger Valari, who had watched the broadcast with tears in their eyes. They had never heard vows like that before. They had never seen love like that before. For many of them, everything they believed about marriage and worth and value started to crumble. In that moment, the celebration lasted for hours. There was music and dancing, and more food than Marcus had ever seen. He and Una barely had a moment alone, pulled in every direction by dignitaries and nobles who suddenly wanted to be seen with the famous human soldier. It was nearly midnight when the alarm started. The music stopped, the lights flickered, and then a voice boomed over Every speaker in the palace, Crix. Attack, all citizens seek shelter. Immediately, this is not a drill, Marcus. Grabbed Yuna's hand. Where is the command center? In the western tower. She said, her face pale but determined. Follow me. They ran through halls, filling with panicked nobles, servants. Screamed, children cried. The beautiful crystal walls shook as explosions rocked the planet's surface. In the command center, Valari generals stood around a holographic map, their faces showing fear. Red dots covered the display. Hundreds of Crix warships had dropped out of hyperspace without warning. They were already breaking through the orbital defenses. Their target is the shield generators. One general reported, if they destroy those, the planet is defenseless. What about our ground forces? Another asked. Scattered, disorganized. We were not prepared for this. Marcus pushed his way to the front of the room. I am Sergeant Marcus Cole, Earth Marine Corps. What forces do we have available? Two. The general stared at him with a mixture of shock and offense. This is a Valari military matter. You have no authority here. Your authority is failing, Marcus replied bluntly. Your shields are falling, your troops are running, and if nobody does something in the next hour, everyone on this planet dies. So either tell me what we have or step aside. The room was silent. Then a younger Valari officer spoke up. We have 200 palace guards, a company of human Marines arrived yesterday for the wedding, and maybe 300 civilian volunteers who know how to shoot. Marcus nodded. That is enough. Show me where the main shield generator is. The general sputtered. You cannot just take command of our forces. Watch me. Yuna stepped forward, her voice cutting through the argument like a blade. He has my authority. As a princess of this empire, I grant him command of all available forces for the duration of this crisis. Does anyone wish to challenge that? Nobody did. The battle for the shield generator lasted 3 hours. Marcus led human Marines and Valari soldiers side by side, using tactics the Crix had never seen. They fought street by street, building by building, pushing back against an enemy that outnumbered them 5-1. Marcus was everywhere, giving orders, pulling wounded soldiers to safety, firing his weapon until it overheated, and taking another from a fallen Crix warrior. The Valari watched him in amazement. This was not the soft, primitive human they had expected. This was a warrior, a leader. Meanwhile, at the palace, Yuna refused to evacuate. I will not hide while my people die, she told Sarah. She picked up a rifle from a fallen guard and positioned herself at the entrance to the civilian shelters. When Crix soldiers broke through the main gates, they found the princess waiting for them. She was not a trained soldier. Her hands shook. Her shots were not always accurate, but she stood her ground, protecting dozens of children. An elderly Ari who had nowhere else to go. For my husband, she whispered as she fired. For Marcus, for everyone who said I was worthless. The 6 fell. When dawn finally came, the battle was over. The shield generators stood intact. The 6 invaders were destroyed or retreating, and in the center of the main plaza, surrounded by cheering soldiers from both species, stood Marcus Cole. He was wounded, exhausted, covered in blood and dirt. But he was alive. A Valari soldier approached him with tears in his eyes. How? He asked. How did you do this? Marcus looked at the soldiers around Him, human, and Valari standing together. Their differences forgotten in the face of shared victory. We protected what mattered, he said simply. That is what humans do. Across the plaza, Yuna ran toward him. He caught her in his arms and held her tight, not caring who was watching. You are insane, she said. Against his chest. Maybe, he agreed. But we won, we did. She pulled back and looked at him with pride burning in her eyes. We really did. And in that moment, surrounded by the ruins of battle and the tears of survivors, they both knew that everything had changed, not just for them but for the entire galaxy. The weeks after the battle changed everything. Videos of the fighting spread across the galaxy. Everyone saw human Marines fighting beside Valari soldiers. Everyone saw Marcus Cole leading the defense with courage and skill. And everyone saw Princess Yuna, the woman her own people called worthless, standing at the palace doors with a rifle in her hands, protecting civilians who had ignored her for 15 years. The story was impossible to ignore. It was played on news channels on every planet. Children acted it out in playgrounds. Historians began writing about it before the smoke had even cleared, and slowly, quietly, the Valari Empire began to change. It started with small things. Young people on Solar Prime began questioning traditions their grandparents had never doubted. Why did worth depend on children? Why were people measured by their bloodlines instead of their actions? If the Barren princess could defend her people while the fertile nobles hid in shelters, then what did fertility really prove? Support groups formed for those called Barren. Protests demanded equal rights for all citizens regardless of reproductive ability. The old ways were cracking and nobody could stop it. Emperor Dezhou summoned Marcus and Yuna to the throne room 1 month after the battle. The palace was still being repaired, but the throne room had been restored to its former glory. The emperor sat on his crystal throne, but something was different about him. He looked older, tired, and maybe, just maybe, ashamed. I have watched the reports, he said slowly. I have seen what you both did during the attack, and I have had many conversations with my advisors about what it means. He stood up from his throne, something Marcus had never seen him do during an audience. He walked down the steps until he stood face to face with his daughter, Yuna. He said her name, sounding strange on his lips, like he had not spoken it in years. I failed you when you were young and sick. I should have held you close. Instead, I pushed you away because I believed you had nothing left to offer. I was wrong. I was so terribly wrong. Tears appeared in Yuna's eyes. She had waited 15 years to hear these words. 15 years of silence and rejection and invisible walls. Father, she whispered. The emperor embraced her. It was awkward and stiff, the embrace of a man who had forgotten how to show love. But it was real, and for Yuna it was everything. When they separated, the emperor turned to Marcus. You have earned more than my gratitude. Today I name you Valari's Shield. It is a title never given to an outsider. It means that you are recognized as a protector of our people with all the rights and honors that come with it. Marcus bowed his head. I am honored. Your Majesty, you should be the emperor, replied, but there was warmth in his voice now. You have done what I thought impossible. You have made me see my own daughter's worth. No military victory could mean more than that. The human military command offered Marcus a promotion Admiral Chen called him personally with the news he could return to Earth, take a position at headquarters, and spend the rest of his career in comfort and respect. He had earned it. Marcus declined. My home is here now, he told the Admiral, with Yuna with the people I fought beside. If you need me, I will serve as military liaison on Solara Prime, but I am not leaving, Admiral. Chen smiled through the holographic screen. I thought you might say that. The position is yours, and Marcus, you did good. Your squad would be proud. Words hit him harder than he expected. For 3 years he had carried the guilt of their deaths. He had wondered if he deserved to survive, but hearing those words from his commanding officer, knowing that his friends would approve of what he had become, something finally loosened in his chest. Thank you, Admiral, he said, his voice rough with emotion. That means more than you know. One evening Marcus and Yuna sat together in her garden. It was beautiful, now full of flowers from both Earth and Solar Prime. The plants grew side by side, different but thriving together. It seemed fitting. I have been thinking, Yuna said, leaning against his shoulder, about our future. What about it? We cannot have children of our own. The doctors confirmed it again last week. There is nothing they can do. She paused, and Marcus felt her tense beside him. But there are other ways to have a family. He turned to look at her. What do you mean? The war left many orphans, children who lost their parents in the fighting. Human children, Valari children. They have no homes, no families, no one to care for them. She looked up at him with hope and fear mixed in her eyes. What if we could give them a home? What if we could be their family? Marcus thought about the idea. Children, not from his blood, not from her blood, but children nonetheless. Small lives that needed love and protection and guidance. It was not what he had expected when he signed up for this mission, but then again nothing had gone the way he expected. I think, he said slowly, that might be the best idea you have ever had. Yuna's face lit up with joy. She threw her arms around him and held tight, laughing and crying at the same time. Really, you mean it? I mean it, he promised. Let us build a family together, a real one. 1 year later their family had grown. Hope was a 7-year-old human girl with red hair and a laugh that could light up any room. Jun was a 10-year-old Valari boy with silver skin and a talent for music. Both had lost their parents in the Creek's attack. Both had found a new home with Marcus and Yuna. They played in the garden while Marcus and Yuna watched from a bench beneath a flowering tree. Hope chased June around the fountain, shrieking with delight when he let her catch him. The sound of their laughter echoed off the crystal walls. I never imagined this, Yuna said quietly. Not in my darkest moments, not in my happiest dreams. I never thought I would have this. Marcus took her hand and squeezed gently. Neither did I. I thought my life ended in that ambush 3 years ago. I was just going through the motions, waiting for the real end to come. But then I met you and everything changed. She leaned her head against his shoulder. Do you regret it? Any of it? Not a single moment. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their children play. 2 species, 2 cultures, 2 worlds brought together by love and choice rather than blood and duty. It was not traditional. It was not what anyone had planned, but it was real. Generations later, historians would write about the marriage of Marcus Cole and Princess Yuna. They would Analyze the political implications, the cultural shifts, the military alliances that followed. They would call it a turning point in galactic history. But they would miss the most important part of the story. It was never about politics. It was never about shields or treaties or military power. It was about two broken people who found each other in the darkness, a soldier who thought he had nothing left to live for, a princess who believed she would never be enough. Together they proved that worth is not measured by what you can produce but by how much you can love. On the day Yuna became empress, standing beside her husband and their children before the gathered representatives of a 100 worlds, a young Valeri girl asked her, "Question, Your Majesty, how did humans change our entire empire? They are so small and live such short lives. What makes them so special?" Number 4, Yuna smiled and looked at Marcus, who was busy trying to fix the crooked crown on Little Hope's head, while June laughed at both of them. "Humans have a gift," she said. "They love without conditions. They protect without asking for reward. They see value in things others have thrown away, and once they decide you matter to them, nothing in the universe can change their minds. That is what makes them special. That is what makes them human." The girl nodded thoughtfully. "I want to be like that." Yuna put a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Then you already are." That night Marcus and Yuna stood on the balcony of the imperial palace, looking up at the stars. 3 moons hung in the sky. Ships from a dozen worlds orbited overhead, and somewhere out there new alliances were forming, new friendships were growing, new families were being built from the broken pieces of old hatred. "Do you think we made a difference?" Marcus asked. Yuna took his hand and interlaced her fingers with his. "I think we proved something important. That love is not weakness, that choosing family is just as meaningful as being born into one. That worth cannot be measured by anyone except ourselves. That is a lot of wisdom for one barren princess," he teased gently. She laughed, the same beautiful sound that had captured his heart years ago. "I had a good teacher, a stubborn human soldier who did not know when to give up. I never will," he promised. "Not on you, not on our family, not ever." They stood together as the moons rose higher, 2 people from different worlds who had found something rare and precious in each other. Not just love, not just family, but proof that the universe was full of possibilities for anyone brave enough to reach for them. And somewhere in classrooms across the galaxy, children were learning a new lesson: that humanity's greatest strength was never their technology or their ships or their weapons. It was something simpler, something more powerful. It was their stubborn, beautiful, impossible ability to love without limits. That was what made humans special. That was what made them matter.